We scared ourselves for sure. Like, that thing's definitely done. But they're pretty resilient. Interestingly, we could honestly start. We're already recording live, but we could dive into it. I'm sure you already know you do your own podcast, which is cool because a lot of guests we have had lately haven't spoke on a mic or anything. So just having someone that brings conversation to the table and knows what's going on is going to be really cool for us.
I'm more than happy to riff. We can talk about whatever. I can go for days. Just if I'm rambling and you want to cut me off, just jump in and take it from me.
Word, likewise.
Perfect.
Can we start with an intro I wrote for you?
Sure.
Cool. If you don't like it, we don't have to put it in.
Just do whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has been putting in serious work in the fitness industry for over 10 years now. Through his content powerhouse and personal training, he makes getting in and staying in shape easier for people. He is the founder of the Core Coaching Method, host of the Dynamic Dialogue podcast, and here today to talk to us about everything fitness through his lens. Please welcome the great and powerful Danny Matranga.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I don't know how great or how powerful, but we'll get through it together. I appreciate the introduction for sure.
Everybody's great and powerful, man. It's definitely within you too. So we're grateful you're here and happy to have you.
I tend to think people have that potential, and that's one of the reasons why I was so drawn to fitness is because it really allows you to cultivate and pull out of people things that, one, they didn't know were possible, and then two, we all need to connect with people at some level on something that we're passionate about, and most of us eventually kind of find our way to what we're passionate about. But I was lucky enough through athletics early on to be like, hey, the human body's this incredibly adaptable thing, and if I could change my body to become a better athlete, get a little leaner, build a little bit of muscle, maybe I can help other people do the same, and that's really what drew me to it to begin with. But the potential that people have to change is what keeps me sticking with it, not just physically, but also emotionally, because you create relationships with every client you have, with all the trainers you work with, and seeing people change physically, mentally, and emotionally through fitness, because it challenges you so much more than physically to stick with it. All you guys are active, so there's days you don't want to fucking do it.
Yep.
And on those days, you really cultivate something deep down. It's something that I can't ever imagine not having in my life. And even if one day I decide, hey, I don't really want to do one-on-one personal training anymore, I don't think there will ever be a day where I'm not either working on my own fitness or helping people with theirs.
Right. And I feel like probably the coolest thing for you is watching the transition of somebody's confidence, where they're coming in, they're a little insecure, they're not really like comfortable with their body, they're not really like all the way who they want to be, and then you can help them and you can watch their confidence change, and it completely changes their whole demeanor as a person.
It's the best part. And I've worked with clients all over the spectrum, from the highest level of physical capability to people who are completely and totally new to fitness and exercise, who've never touched a weight before, who are entirely intimidated by the idea of, oh my gosh, I'm going to challenge myself physically. Am I going to get hurt? I'm going to look stupid. I don't know what I'm doing. And I always find those clients to be some of the most rewarding people to work with, because before you see any changes physically, you see changes emotionally, you see changes with their confidence. And just to use an example, I've been training my girlfriend's dad for the last 3 months, who's never exercised in his life, but he's 60 years old. He came over here from Mexico and he was a teenager, and he works insanely hard. So he has the work ethic thing down, but the exercise thing is like completely foreign to him. He's like, okay, I know how to move my body, I know how to work hard, but I just don't vibe with exercise. And he's been coming over to the house because I'm fortunate enough to have a home gym in the garage. I have the studio out here, but it's easier for him to just come to the garage. And I've been working with him for about 45 minutes, 3 times a week for the last 2 months. And his confidence has just gone through the roof. It's really cool to see. And you're totally right, because that's the first thing that changes. I do think some of it is I'm more confident in how my body looks, moves, and feels. But I think a lot of it is, hey, I could not do this a little while ago. Now I can. Right. And where does that take me then from here? Because if I could change this much in 2 months physically, how can I change emotionally, spiritually, mentally? And the physical stuff is so palpable. We see it, we feel it. I really do think it motivates people to expand and evolve in other ways without getting too woo-woo. But it is something that I think people who are physically active and who challenge their bodies and initiate that level of change, they become more encouraged and more open to developing as a whole human being. And that's something that I've really learned starting as such a young man doing this and not really having had any development of my personality, of my spirituality, of my emotional intelligence. Like being able to change my body really made me realize just how adaptive we are as organisms overall.
Right.
It translates really, really well to just the rest of life, right? Like there's a really cliche saying for people who are in fitness, I think pretty regularly, of just doing that first thing in the morning or doing that at any point in the day is the hardest point of the day. So then everything else in comparison is not as tough, right? Like that's definitely so true and such a gift that comes just from exercise.
It's totally true. I mean, for years, I was part of the 4 a.m. crew. Like even going back to high school, when I first started training, I would get up at 4 a.m., I would take a cold shower, I would have 2 pieces of toast with almond butter and a protein shake, and I would drive to the gym, and I would wait until the guy opened it at 4:45. And I remember so many days, like this is before I knew about the value of sleep, and I tell people all the time, I literally flushed all that training down the toilet because I didn't recover from any of it. It was pure, like I didn't understand that you needed sleep because I was just like, I'm going to the weight room, then I'm going to class, and then after class, I have whatever sport I'm doing. But that getting up and doing the hard thing first, when you don't want to do it, whatever the fuck else is going to happen to you that day is probably going to be easier than that first workout or that early morning workout, because it's you and the tiredness versus the task at hand. And if you can overcome that, then whatever the hell gets thrown your way is substantially easier to handle. And I've already done one hard thing. I can build off that. And I do think that people generally now struggle with that. Some people it's easy, but I do think a lot of people struggle with doing things that are challenging. And that's part of the reason why I champion exercise so much, is not just everybody knows what it does for you physically. Everybody knows what it does for you mentally, cognitively, and how good it is for your brain. But it does something to build that level of resilience. It means something to be someone who does the hard thing physically.
Right. And I think that also, like what you're talking about with getting up early in the morning and kind of getting that first part over with and it's easier, it comes with even smaller things than getting up and going to the gym for an hour. If you can just get up and make your bed, that's like a win. It's like your first win of the day. And then getting in that cold shower, which by the way, I love. That's kind of way to wake up.
And I was like, before people did cold showers, it was like, I knew that there was a benefit to it, but really why I was doing it was because it was waking my ass up.
Yeah,
and
totally. Totally. Yeah.
No, respect to that. I guess just for some context for everybody listening to, this is the first time we've ever sat down with you and had a conversation, right? So why don't you give us some context to kind of, how did you become you today? Like, what's that story?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the best place to start would be with how I got into exercise. And, I think I got into it the way that many fitness professionals do, which is through athletics. Growing up, I played all the sports. I liked all the sports. I wanted to be good at all the sports, but
what sports were those?
Baseball, basketball, football, and then you have, the undersized white guy syndrome, where it's like, okay, I clearly have a cap here. I'm going to be very limited by the fact that, my dad's 5'9", my mom's 5'3". I was 5'7.5" as a senior in high school, like 170
we
pounds.
We can all relate to that.
I was like, well, I think there's a ceiling here. What can I do to really elevate that ceiling? And, as all of you are aware, if you're not going to get any taller, the best thing you can do is probably get a little faster and get a little bit stronger. And so that's what really, helped me gravitate towards the weight room. And I had a physique and a body type that developed relatively quickly. I was always on the leaner side, so I saw progress physically very quickly. And I just became totally hooked on it. But what made me want to share it with other people is my dad. My dad has Parkinson's disease, which is a really degenerative physical illness that affects the brain. The part of the brain that coordinates movement and motor patterns started to degrade for him when I was 12. That's when he got his diagnosis. So from 12 to 17, I watched my dad go from somebody that I would play catch with in the backyard to somebody that was completely wheelchair bound, who I had to drive around. And I became really committed to learning everything I could about how I could help him. And I realized very quickly that that disease is incurable. There's nothing you can do with nutrition, and there's really nothing you can do with exercise. All you can do is slow the progression. And so that's when I said, okay, if I can't help him, I can help someone else. And this exercise thing, this nutrition thing, seems to be the key to preventing this kind of stuff. Not just to happening to me, but happening to other people. You can't really control the hand you're dealt, but you can control how you play the hand.
100%.
And so I became very insatiably hungry in terms of learning everything I could about physical fitness and exercise. So as a jock who loved the way exercise made me look and somebody who didn't have any athletic ambitions beyond high school because it just wasn't realistic. And I was like, well, I probably got to go to college. Everybody goes to college. So what the hell can I go to college for? And I found that kinesiology was a major. I was like, oh, you can study exercise. And I'm really passionate about helping people with exercise. So let's apply for all the kinesiology departments in the state school system. And I got into Sonoma State, which is like, 5 minutes from here? Yeah. And so I came down here to study exercise, and I needed to pay for it because my parents weren't in a position where they could pay for me to go to school. And so I was like, all right, I think I'm going to get a job at the vitamin shop because I really like supplements. And I remember specifically like applying at the vitamin shop, getting accepted for that job, and showing up on the day I was supposed to show up for my first day. And the dude who interviewed me was working the front counter. And I got out of the car and I could see him through the double pane glass, and the look on his face was like, oh, fuck. And I knew something was weird. So the minute I opened the door, he's like, hey, yeah, I meant to call you. I meant to tell you this. I actually had to give your job to an interorganizational transfer. Somebody transferred up here, so I actually gave that position to them. If you wouldn't mind maybe waiting a couple months, we could probably get you another job. And I was like, dude, I need a job pretty soon here because I don't have an income, and I have like $1,100. And so what I did was I said, I know that you can get a personal training certification, and I know that I can make money doing that. And so I spent $800 on the NASM certification, and I studied it every morning at 24 Hour Fitness in Roanoke Park at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would go there and work out before my 7 a.m. class. So I'd work out from 5 to 6:15, take a shower, and from 6:15, 6:30 or so to about 6:45, I would sit in the front of that gym and I would read that book, and I would hope that the manager would see me. So I was like, this guy's got to know that I want this shit. I'm grinding for this. Like, if he sees me reading the book, he might talk to me. And I was so shy because I just moved down here and I didn't know anybody. But eventually I passed that test. That dude agreed to hire me. And I was so bad for the first 3 to 6 months of personal training. I remember I sold the very first person I ever had a consultation with, and then I was like goosing for the next 3 months. I couldn't sell anybody anything. I had a coconut haircut, pimples, this terrible retainer, 2 fake teeth on it because I was congenitally born with 1 missing tooth, and I got 1 knocked out. So I had this doofy little retainer on. And nobody's taking you serious because you're talking to adults, and you're like, listen, exercise is very important. You should build muscle and elevate your metabolic capacity, and you probably shouldn't be this fat. And people are like, how old are you again? And I'd be like, listen, don't worry about that. I would try to do everything I could to position myself as the expert. And it was a really big challenge for me at 18 years old. And knowing that I needed to be successful to pay for school really forced me out of my comfort zone. And after about 6 to 12 months, I finally got some traction, started to get some clients, started to get some referrals, started to get some confidence. And after about 2 or 3 years, I was really, really well established in that gym, training 150 sessions a week or a month, 150 sessions a month, going to school full time, getting my degree, graduated in 4 years, paid for everything myself, 0 student loan debt, the kind of stuff that I was really proud of, my parents were really proud of. And that was kind of the catalyst for and the foundation for ultimately getting onto social media, trying to spread what it is that I'd learned along the way to other people through other avenues. And that was tricky at first too. That was really uncomfortable too, but I'd already been there. I'd already done that. I'd already faced the rejection and the fear. And what so many people struggle with when they try to build a digital brand or an online presence is, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? And at that point, having had the experience of just trying to get some clients at a 24-hour fitness, I was so much more resilient to that I was able to push through and ultimately get to a place where I had an online business. And that allowed me to open my own business in person, my own gym. And it is like the quintessential story. You start from the bottom, you build your way up. But that's really the story of how I got to where I'm at.
Where does all the ambition come from, though? Because many people, I think, there's a lot of personal trainers, right, who probably found it through sports. But then there's a lot of average personal trainers, right?
Yeah, more probably average to below average than good. And that's the case for most things.
Yep.
Was it the Parkinson's with your dad?
Well, I think what it was I didn't have that safety net. My dad lost everything, and it was really hard to watch. And my mom was really never stable or in the picture very much. So it was always a question of, okay, if you don't do this, ain't nobody coming to save you. So you can't fuck this up. And there's something really powerful about that. Because, yes, some of it is ambition. I'll say there's a lot of ambition. I definitely am a go-getter. I'm an overachiever. I have that alpha male, high T. If I'm going to do this, I want to be better than you, and I want to be better than you. And at 24, it was like, okay, you sold $25,000 worth of training this month. I'm going to sell 27. Oh, you did 150 sessions. I'm going to do 155. Some of that competitiveness that I got from sports was a piece of the ambitiousness that one might look and see and go, oh, that guy's really driven. He's really ambitious. He wants it. A lot of it was I didn't have a choice. I had to go get it.
Right. 100%.
And there's something really helpful about that. And you know, I hate the fact that my parents had the struggles that they had. And a lot of people learn to resent that and they pack it away. But I love that I got something positive out of that, which was I had to go out and do it myself. Mm-hmm. And I know so many people who have really stable parents, who have really loving parents who support them. And I think that's great. But if you don't have that, it can actually be beneficial for you. It forces you out of your comfort zone. And when you know you don't have that safety net and you know you don't have that fallback, it challenges you in a way that I think can push you a little higher. Mm-hmm. And I do think that you see that consistently with people who are quote unquote successful or who accomplish things, is that they either don't have that fallback or they hit that bottom point where they had no other choice. Mm-hmm. And I think I had both of those things happen relatively early, and I had the fortune of finding something that I was passionate and ambitious and wanted to succeed with. And so once those two things came together, it's a formula. It is a formula for success for me, for sure.
100%.
How did you said during like the first 3 months it wasn't going so good? How did it get to going good? What were the things you did?
Yeah, so it was not going good at all. At all. I remember I was living off of Marlowe Road in Santa Rosa, which is serendipitous because I just bought my first home over there about
Congrats.
That's cool. 3 blocks away from the apartment that I moved to when I moved down here because I couldn't afford student housing. So I moved into this 2-bedroom apartment with my best friend from high school who was going to Santa Rosa Junior College and trying out for the basketball team. And he moved down into that apartment, and the other guy, I don't even remember his name, he was in the other room. He had like a cat. And me and him split this 10 by 10 room. And it was horrible. Our beds literally overlapped. Like I had a Tempur-Pedic mattress. He had like a normal mattress on a box spring, and I just bent like the top of my Tempur-Pedic up enough that I could push it up against his bed, and then the rest of it fit into the closet.
Wow. You guys were sleeping together.
Essentially, yes. With the cat. Yes, essentially, yes. And so the closet had to be open to fit my queen bed into it and then bend the top of the bed up against his bed frame.
Wow.
And so I was there for like the first 3 months, and the other dude in the other room hated living with us because it was like protein shakes and protein farts and bro talk all the time. And when he moved out, we were like, shit, dude, this apartment's like $1,300. And I, at that point, was literally making like, I think I was doing like 5 sessions a week and making minimum wage on top of that. So I was probably netting like $300 a paycheck. So the minute that other dude was like, I'm out, we were like, well, we actually can't afford the whole apartment. We can only afford this one room. Mm-hmm. And so I had like 25 days to basically like get this rent, enough money to get this rent paid, get through my finals week and all that shit. And it was just awful. And so like that was the moment in that first month period where I was like, dude, you better figure this shit out because like there's really no choice here. Like you're either getting bounced from this or you're going to figure out a way to make some money. So I was just up there at the front desk, everybody that came in just being like, what are you working out today? I don't know. You need some help with that? No. Okay. Have a nice day. You know, like talking to as many people as I could. And eventually I got enough traction that I was able to pull myself out of that. But again, it's a situation where it's like, you don't really have a choice. So it's going to be uncomfortable, but you got to do it.
Either figure it out or you don't.
Yeah.
And those are the two choices. You better figure it out unless you don't want it to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that does tend to work well for me. It doesn't work well for everybody.
Some people lock up and shut down.
Yep.
And that kind of separates.
And I cannot tell you how many times I wanted to run home and just be like, I wanted to run home. And I was like, but you can't.
Nowhere to run.
Like there were so many days where I was so angry. I was like, I had all this pent up teenage angst of like, this is such bullshit. All my friends have such stable home situations and their parents help them out and their parents give them money. And now I appreciate it so much. But 100%. I was so angry, so resentful, so frustrated. But pushing through that and having that opportunity to challenge myself is something that I'm so grateful for now because I'm mature enough to really understand how much it benefited me.
Right.
And how much it helps me connect with people who are struggling with their weight or with their fitness or with their habits. Because when you're 18 and in shape, how the fuck are you going to relate to somebody who's 45, has 2 kids, and hates exercise?
Right.
Yes.
Mutual suffering. Hey, 100%. Your life is hard in some ways. Check it out. So is mine. Here's how we're going to connect. So it was a gift that I didn't expect. And I'm thankful for it every day.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen at some point in your life, and in those moments, you absolutely like don't understand it. You don't know why, and you're really hating things. You start to try and blame people or things for them. And looking back, to me at least, the worst things that have ever happened to me, that I thought were the worst things that ever happened to me in those moments, turned out to be the best things that have ever happened to me. You know?
Absolutely. Every breakup I ever went through taught me
Yep.
something about relationships. Every client who didn't sign up taught me something about sales.
Right.
Every issue I had, growing up with family taught me something about being independent. You have to go through it enough and not die,
Yep.
and go through it enough and survive to be like, okay, when bad things happen, it's not the end of the world.
And you have to have a positive outlook towards the things. If you just see bad things happen and think, oh, it didn't work because she or he or somebody else, something like that, messed it up, then you're never really going to learn. You have to look at it like, okay, what can I do to be better at this situation? Why is it that I lost it, and how can I change it so the next time it doesn't happen?
Yeah, and you have to be able to frame things as like, okay, did this happen to me, or did this happen for me?
Right.
Because if this happened to me and I perpetually frame myself as a victim, you will end up in perpetuity going around in circles as the person who everything happens to.
Right.
But if you can frame it as, okay, where's the lesson in this? What can I learn from this? Then those little chunks of adversity that happen along the way can be invaluable lessons in moving you forward in life. And I did learn how to do that. I had to realize that acting as though all of the shit was unfair, it wasn't working. And I wasn't born with the, inclination to be like, this is happening for me, I'm going to frame this as positive and constructive. I had to basically fuck it up enough and be like, hey, telling myself that this isn't fair, that ain't
Doesn't help
working.
anything.
It has
Doesn't
not
pay the
helped
bills.
yet. So let's try something else.
Just digs you deeper in that.
Absolutely.
That grave,
And it
for
gives
sure.
you, and it just, if you're already negative, that's just going to make you more negative, and it's just going to kind of pull you downhill. Whereas if you just stop and figure out what you can do and do the best you can and let go of the results, It's really
And
up to you.
I'm not like that all the time. There's definitely days where I have that tendency. I think we all do. And some people are really good at it. Some people are never like that. They're always positive. They're always pragmatic. And I look up to people like that. There are days where I'm not positive and I'm not pragmatic, but I remember to check in and go, you know damn well where this is going to take you. A whole lot of nowhere. So, so figure it out from here.
You have to pick your struggle. You either deal with the negativity and that sucks, or getting up, getting out of bed early, doing positive shit. Could be hard at times, but pick your battle.
And the whole choose your hard thing, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to be overweight. It's hard to exercise. Choose your hard. It's hard to eat healthy. It's hard to deal with disease. Choose your hard. There's so many things that you are going to face challenges. I think we've gotten so deconditioned to the fact that life is allowed to be challenging because of the convenience culture.
Right.
Everything's instant, everything's fast, everything's convenient, and all of the good shit that people really want, that they drown themselves with convenience to because they don't have it. It does take work. You can get the dopamine hit from your phone. You can watch porn instead of investing in meaningful relationships. You can sit on your ass instead of exercising, but it's so shallow, it doesn't get you anywhere. So once you become comfortable with what is essentially uncomfortable, that's when life starts to get better.
You get comfortable being uncomfortable. And once you can do that, man, everything seems easy and it seems simple, and it makes your life a lot easier. And the other thing I was going to say back on that was that if you get some, imagine in the beginning, it was really hard for you to be in that room dealing with that situation. Your biggest problem was, okay, making my rent for this month. Now, if you would have fast forwarded to where you're at now, looking at things, you're like, oh my God, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted, whatever. But bringing yourself to where you're at now and looking at your situation, I'm sure there's things that are probably harder to deal with in your situation now than other than just a rent check or
Totally.
something.
I mean,
You know what
there's so many unique challenges that I face on a day-to-day basis as somebody who owns a business, who's in a relationship, who has a dog, all these things that we deal with as adults. And I think back to the simpler problems sometimes when
Exactly.
life was
Yeah.
simpler.
Totally.
Even though my life sucked, it indisputably it was pretty shitty to have no money and basically be living off of cereal and protein shakes. I still relish the simplicity of those problems.
Totally. I can
Because
totally
they
agree
were
with that.
problems that ultimately gave me the tools to deal with the problems that, come with more responsibility, that come with having more ambition and more success. And I smile and look so fondly back on that apartment. There's not a single piece of me that looks back at that apartment. And I'm telling you guys, the fucking power used to go out like 15 times a night. And it would go on and it would go off. And it would go on and go off. And my PS3, that's how old, long time ago this was. My PS3, yeah, it would double beep on, double beep off, double beep on, double beep off. And then you hear gunshots, and like nobody in the apartment complex spoke any English. Every time I did laundry, I would come back with 2/3 of my shit because half of it would go, get swiped out of the dryer. And I look back on that with 100% fondness and gratitude, and I love it. And some days, like, I wish I could just go back and talk to that guy and be like, listen, this is where you're going to be in 5 years.
Yep.
And that kid would never, ever have believed it. And the cool thing is, like, that I check myself with that shit when I'm feeling like an ungrateful prick, which happens a lot because we all have things that we want. We all feel entitled to a certain degree. But I think all the time, if who I am now, interestingly enough, owning a home like 3 blocks from that apartment, if I could just walk down the road, get in a time machine and walk down the road, knock on that apartment, and me now could talk to me then and be like, look, it's going to be a long road, but you'll get to this point. I wouldn't have believed it. And it's not like I have like anything special. I have things that I'm happy to have, but I look fondly upon those days and those memories and those struggles. And what I have now, I would have never believed was possible. But because of those moments, that's exactly why I think it is.
Right. And if that guy that lives down the street walked over to your apartment and knocked on your door and handed you his company right now to that kid, he would not be able to run it. He would screw it up.
Yeah.
He would lose it like
exactly.
that. So it's like you can't be handing. I think that's a reason a lot of like big companies with a lot of money that are passed down to like children and stuff like that, they go to shit because in order to be the person that can run that company, you have to have built that company. You have to know the ins and the outs of it. You got to know every single person under you. You have to know how to do their job also to make sure that they're doing it correctly. Because if you don't, you're sitting at the top like all pretty. It doesn't work. It's not going to work out. So you have to go through those struggles and learn those things from the building of the company in order to be good enough to be able to run the company.
Absolutely.
Experience is the best teacher, and resilience is built through that for sure. I heard on, I think it was the Full Send podcast too, Kamara Usman said something like, his mom used to tell him, like, if all the people in the world took their problems and put them in one pile,
you'd pick your shit up real fast.
Your shit up real quick, yeah. And you'd always just want that. So I think that's
I actually saw that the other day, and maybe you shared it. I don't know, but I did see it, and I remember thinking, like, yeah, that is pretty true, and that's something that I learned from working with people. When you are a personal trainer, when you're a strength and conditioning coach, people come to you because they want to change their body. Maybe they want to move better. Maybe they want to look better. Maybe they want to feel better. But the reason they're struggling very rarely is specific to just their body. It's usually something going on emotionally, something going on mentally.
It's almost like a lifestyle thing.
It's always a lifestyle thing. And so, you're working with somebody and you're like, hey, I'm going to give you the perfect diet. I'm going to give you the perfect training program. And for some reason, you're not going to stick with it. And I'm going to have to unpack why that is. And you get to know people and you get to know what they struggle with. And very, very quickly, I started to realize everybody's going through it. Everybody's struggling. And I have had the opportunity to probably train over 1,000 people. And some of the shit that I have heard that people have dealt with, the trauma that they've gone through, the suffering that they've gone through, like it's remarkable. And perspective is huge in this life too. Like it's so easy to think you are the main character. I'm the main character. Only my shit matters. I'm the only one who's got a hard life. I'm the only one who struggled. And when you work with people in an avenue like fitness, where they might have a physical problem that they need a solution to, you also need to be able to acknowledge the emotional problem, the spiritual problem, the discipline problem. It's always multifaceted. And that taught me really, really quickly, like, okay, 1, yeah, you've had some shit, but so has everybody else. And 2, whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish, like the physical thing comes easy for me, but there's all these other things you got to work on too. And if it ain't all right, you're going to have some problems.
And I feel like you probably are somewhat of a psychologist from working with that many people, just because you're learning how to take what they're saying and then try and figure out what that actually means. And also you're working with people at sometimes that's the most stress, the hardest thing you've ever done is 100 push-ups. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. So you're meeting them at a time of their life where they are struggling the most. And so I'm sure a lot comes out, plus throw a little endorphins in there. Like there's a lot of chemicals that are mixing while you're working out for the first time and going through that I'm sure they're venting to you a lot about it. And you're having to kind of pick through that and learn how to transition that back into helping them at what they're doing.
As I tell people all the time, like, you would be shocked what starts coming out of people once they start moving.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it sounds horrible, but like people have opened up to me in the middle of their set about like somebody that they know that was murdered or having been sexually assaulted. And imagine being 18, 19 years old and being like, I have no fucking clue what to say back to you.
Plus, you were already like a shy
And I'm
guy.
like, wow, 5 more? Okay, geez, yeah, so how does that, let's unpack that. It's just so many times people hit me with their deepest, darkest shit because you're connecting with them. They're vulnerable in that environment, right? And so they're uncomfortable in that environment. And you're making them feel comfortable. You're like, hey, you're doing great. Nice job, perfect form. What that looked like on set 1 compared to what it looked like on set 3 is night and day. I'm really proud of how this exercise has improved just in the last week. Let's move on to the next one. And they're like, I can trust this person. I'm vulnerable in front of this person, and they've helped me out along the way. And then they divulge some of their deepest, darkest secrets to you, and I'm just like, I have no idea how it is to connect with this and meet with this. Now that stuff comes really easy. Like one of the unique gifts I've gotten from working with people so closely is I can resolve conflicts much more easily. I can, communicate about highly volatile and emotional topics without losing my cool. Because if you have a transactional relationship with somebody where they're paying you for a service, you can't exactly say, nah, I'm not going to fucking talk about that. Sorry. Sometimes I do tell my clients like, that's way beyond my pay grade, man. Sorry, I can't help you. They're still going to talk to you about it because you're kind of captive.
Yeah.
And so it's really given me some incredible communication skills that I think most young people don't develop or haven't had the opportunity to develop. And I tell people all the time, this career has given me tools, skills that are worth so much more than all the money I've made and all the material possessions I've been able to acquire through. Like if you told me right now after 10 years, you can either have a lump sum, every penny you've ever made, you can have that up front, lump sum, or all the lessons you have ever made, you can have that up front, lump sum, but you got to rewind and go back to when you first started. You can have the money, you can have the skills and the lessons. Fucking take the skills and the lessons
all day.
Because you can make the money with the skills and the lessons like nothing.
Like
you know
nothing.
I mean? Yeah, the money's the easy part. It's the skills and the lessons that got you the money. That's the hard part.
Yep. And you only learn those by being in a situation where you're kind of you've kind of gone a little bit past what you're capable of conversationally. You're like, I really don't know what to say here, but I'm going to try to meet this person where they're at because we've got 41 minutes to go.
It's almost like biting off more than you can chew and figuring out how to chew it.
Constantly.
It's kind of like
it's exactly what
the analogy that I kind of go with. And I think it's a good way to be for any person, whether they're an athlete, an entrepreneur, a business guy, whatever it is. Like, I feel like biting off more than you can chew and figuring out how to chew is always better than turning down things.
Somebody said something one time that I do think it's a little bit reckless. I don't remember where I heard it, but it resonated with me a lot. And they said, when you've got too much on your plate, push to the side and put one more thing on there. I was like, what the hell? I don't know why I like that resonated with me, but I was going through some shit at the time.
Right.
And I really do relish, like, when things are hard, that's okay because life is allowed to be hard. It's just the modern environment that we live in that is attempting to convince us otherwise.
It's trying to make everybody soft. And you know that saying, right? It's like hard men create
Hard
soft
times,
soft
weak
times
men.
Create weak men,
soft
weak men create
Strong
hard
times.
times, and the cycle perpetually repeats.
Yep.
That's one I go back and forth on with, because I think that so oftentimes culturally we have a misrepresentation of what it means to be a strong man.
Right. Hard.
And I think that, you could project strength and you can project masculinity in a lot of different ways. And I'm certainly somebody who, I'm physically inclined. I like to work hard. I think that those are inherently masculine. But I also feel like so much of the projection of machismo that we see culturally, like, I'm going to be mean to people. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to push it all down.
And never showing your emotions, never showing your insecurities, things like that I feel like there's a lot of guys out there that are big and tough and strong, and they're the original, like, masculine man that was, like, shows manliness, but he pushes down all of his feelings. He doesn't talk about them. So he's trying to, like, hold it all in tight and pen it all up, when really I think there's a lot of people that are not physically as strong and don't look as manly, but if they can be one with themselves and everybody and transparent, be open about their insecurities, be open with their emotions, and be able to talk about it. I mean, not overly.
Yeah,
but
oversharing is
too much too. You know?
Yeah, it's one of
that
those.
shows the insecurity to me in a sense. But being able to be open with your insecurities, open with your emotions is kind of like,
If you have to like preface things by saying like I'm going to be really authentic, or I'm
Yeah.
about to be really vulnerable,
Yeah.
it's probably bullshit.
Right.
But if like you're confident enough and comfortable enough to be like, yeah, you know, I had no idea what I was doing. I fucking sucked at that. You know, like to own your shit in whatever capacity that is. I think that's a projection, or not just a projection, but it's an exemplification of strength.
Totally.
And I do think that so oftentimes we get caught up in the phenotype, the display, what masculinity looks like, what it sounds like. But I think there's a lot of it that's silent, that you
it
don't
comes from
see.
the inside.
The ability to push forward without complaining. The ability to have a story that nobody knows about because it was tough, but you didn't complain about it. You didn't ask for help. You push forward and you help other people. You know, the ability to communicate with the people that care about you. You know, we think about masculinity as my job as a protector. If I'm a man in theory, if I'm masculine in theory, you know, I should be able to protect the things and the people that I care about. And yes, we obviously think about the physical manifestation of that. Like if I go out with my friends and my girl and somebody's, you know, hitting on my girl, I want to be able to say, hey, knock it off. Or, you know, if somebody pulls up on me in a dark alley, I don't want to be fucked. Right. But there's also something to being able to, like, if you got a friend who's going through a breakup and they can turn to you because you can hear them and listen to them and give them good advice. Empathize with them. Provide a port in the storm, you know, a little bit of shelter. We don't necessarily think of that as being conventionally masculine, but I think it is. I think being able to be strong and supportive, both physically and emotionally, is masculine.
Right.
Even though, you know, like we might think, oh, well, that's a weak man. A weak man is talking about his feelings or comfortable talking about his feelings. And you don't want to overshare.
Right.
Because I think, like you said, it's definitely a sign of insecurity to be the person on the first date who's like, here's all the things that are wrong with me.
Right.
But you do need to be well-rounded. And this job has taught me, and that, you know, as somebody who led with physicality and masculinity and power and muscle, and that was all that it was all about. I realized very quickly that is not enough. Right. You got to develop the rest.
Yeah, and then the metaphor you're saying, a protector, like the metaphor that I use for that is like, so there's sheep and there's wolves, right? And so like the wolves are like kind of like the, you know, the killers, the ones that are like super alpha, manly men, but they're also, they'll take advantage of the sheep. They'll do these things, right? And I like to think of a protector in the same sense of like a sheepdog, right? So he can go and take care of the sheep and be on them, but then he can go fight the wolves, you know? So he's like happy in the middle. He's very masculine, and he can take care of the wolves and make sure they're not preying on the sheep, but he's also very sensitive and can take care of his pack, you know?
I like that.
It's sort of like what you were saying with, you know, successful, sustainable exercise. You have to, it's not only the physical thing, but it's the spiritual, it's the mental. It's sort of like the spokes of a bicycle wheel, right? If one thing falls off, then the whole wheel will fall apart. I think being a good man might be successful, right? Because if you have just that alpha, I'm the protector, I'm the toughest dude in the room, like that shines through his personality, right? It's almost just, it's like a mask he's wearing to find comfort in society, right? Men wear many different kinds. But, you know, if you weigh too far on that scale and you don't go all out on any of the other ones, then that's going to show in your personality, right? So
well,
it's
like when he said it was like well-rounded.
It's just
like,
balance,
yeah,
right?
Be balanced with everything.
The beast who can keep it calm at the same time too.
Yeah, you know, I've more recently really started to think about, you know, who am I becoming as a whole human being? What can I work to develop? Because obviously early in life, the physical thing came natural, and for a lot of people that's the hard part, and then the nutritional thing came pretty natural. So there's these pillars, if you will, of health, wellness, of wholeness as a human being. And again, this shit gets woo-woo. I do apologize, because not everybody wants to hear a sub-30 personal trainer giving life advice, and I'm entirely aware
people will gain a lot of value from
that this could come across as being perhaps not narcissistic, but perhaps I'm, you know, I haven't lived a very long life, but
but you're just sharing your personal opinion and what things you've learned along your journey. And it's not like saying that you know everything. It's just simply saying, hey, this is what I've learned on my journey. And if there's anything anybody else can learn from my story and the things that I've learned, and I can help convey those things, then here it is.
Good. That makes me feel better. because I think when you think we all have things that have come natural to us, and we want to lean into those things because it's easy. I like sports and physical activity. I'm an athlete, so the exercise thing is easy. I like eating healthy and nourishing my body, so taking care of myself is easy. But the emotional shit, God, did that take a while to develop. The resilience and getting over having a semi-traumatizing childhood with multiple divorces, tons of fighting, tons of abuse. God, did that take a lot of work? And I didn't want to face that. Just wanted to run as far away from that as I possibly could.
Plus, you were young, so you didn't really have the tools yet to be able to like navigate that kind of a situation.
It's not naturally instilled in people.
And when I started working with people and being like, why the hell don't you understand how important this exercise thing is? Why is this so hard for you? I realized like they're better at the other shit. Mm-hmm. And they suck at the stuff that I'm good at. So it's like a skill tree in a video game. You have dexterity and magic and defense and speed and attack. And it's like, if you're all attack and all speed, which is like the athlete equivalent, and you have all these vulnerabilities, you're going to be in trouble. You need to develop the whole skill tree. Yep. And so, the confidence I got through, the fitness and nutrition thing gave me the ability to like confidently at 20 pay out of pocket to go to a therapist, which I'm like, this is so lame. Like, why am I doing this? I don't need this shit. And then I was like, oh yeah, I got a lot of baggage shit. After one session, I was like, damn, good thing I talked to that guy, because I did not know what I was dealing with and all this stuff. And it was so uncomfortable and so revolting. And I was like, oh, that's probably like going to the gym for the first time.
But to me, that is what manly today looks like, is saying, okay, I am not well-rounded, and I want to be the most well-rounded, best person I can be, so I'm going to go to a therapist, which a lot of people would say was weak. A lot of manly men would be like, oh, I'm not going to a therapist. It's like, if you want to be the best, which in my mind is the most manly, then being the best at everything, right? Like, not just being one-sided. You got to go to therapy. You got to figure out where your weak spots are, because not necessarily, you can't just look at yourself and know where your weak spots are. You have to go talk to a professional that's his job or her job to find those weak spots and then start working on those.
Yeah.
I think also, too, communication, you can't argue that's just how humans work through their problems and get better at things, right?
Yep.
So any man who's saying, I don't want to communicate and evolve and better myself, then just have fun staying the same, because that's what you're doing essentially by disregarding how good that is, man or woman, just for humans to communicate.
It's so, and like, you think about it, like all of us are athletic. Mm-hmm. All of us like the demand of something physical. And I can tell by your guys' ears before you put the headphones on, you guys like fighting.
Yep.
And you might rather fight another human being than fight what's going on inside, because it's more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
And I don't know how true that is for everybody, but I know that was probably true for me too. And I felt that I was able to cultivate a lot more strength and a lot more resiliency by saying, I definitely don't have it all figured out, and I'm willing to work until I do. And I probably won't. I probably won't ever reach a point where I've got it all figured out, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to try my best to be the best boyfriend, husband I can be, to be the best business owner I can be, to be the best content creator I can be, to eat well, to train hard, because building up and working at improving in those areas, even if you're at the very bottom of the ladder, is what I think this whole thing is about. That's what I think this whole thing is about. It's the best part of life. It's like it's the shit that you're not good at that you start to get better at. That's what it's all about.
And that's the fun part, or at least for me, like doing stuff that I'm already good at is like, that's cool, but I don't feel like I'm gaining ground and making myself a better person by getting even more lopsided. Like, yes. I'd much rather take something that I'm really bad at and be like, okay, I want to build this up to make it all a little bit better.
And you learn a lot about yourself by doing that.
Right.
Like we're right out here on the golf course, which I picked up at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was terrible because I have ADHD. I'm impatient as fuck, and I'm like a fast twitch power kind of athlete.
Yep.
And so golf's all about finesse. So I walked up there, my first golf swing ever, and I swung as hard as I could, and I think the ball went like 2 feet behind me off the tee.
Yep.
And my buddies are all laughing like, that's the record for the world's shortest drive, -5 yards. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be a real pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I had to check myself in ways physically and mentally playing golf that I did not think were even possible. I was like, how could this game be so hard?
Dude, I'm in the same boat.
There's all these fat old guys that are just dominating me physically in this game, and it's driving me nuts. But I would go to the range, I would figure it out, and I would work on it. And I still am not very good at golf. But the amount of shit I learned about myself, about patience, about finesse, about discipline, about consistency through trying this thing that I sucked at, it taught me something. And golf is another physical avenue. It's just different. And so you pick up a lot of that same stuff when you challenge yourself emotionally or mentally, when you have the hard conversation, when you go above and beyond what you've done before. Maybe it's starting the podcast or opening the business or whatever it is. The minute you put yourself outside of your comfort zone, good things start to happen. It's just you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
100%.
Yep.
I want to circle back. A while ago, you mentioned that from personal training, you gained all these, like communication skills, even sales skills, right? And marketing skills.
Sure.
And those are all things that could be translated really to any business, right? But marketing in particular, like you've done a really, really good job from outside perspective looking in of breaking through the noise in a super competitive industry.
Sure.
Fitness and then online fitness in that regard, right?
Yeah.
What do you like accredit breaking that noise to, or like successfully branding yourself and building buy-in? Like, what's your philosophy behind all that?
A big part of it was I used to consume the noise. I used to believe the noise. I used to be a victim of the noise. All of the things that I'm able to cut through now were products I wasted my money on and bullshit I used to believe. And so it really helps to have actually been on the customer side of the thing. We talk a lot about it in business, the customer journey. Mm-hmm. And I went through the entire journey. I remember buying the supplements that now I know don't work. I remember trying the workout plans that now I don't work.
The original Jacked?
Yeah. Oh, man. And I was slamming back 3 scoops of Jacked 3D. I tell this story a lot when I was like a junior in high school going to the gym, and I would take the bus to the closest stop to the gym. And I remember sitting on that bus tweaking on
Almost
3
dying.
scoops of Jacked 3D. And that shit was so powerful. It used to have this chemical called 1,3-dimethylamylamine, which was a amphetamine mimetic. It was basically like a clone of meth.
Yeah.
And that shit fucked me up so hard. I remember my dick wouldn't work. None of it would work. And I remember being like, oh my God, I have to take more and more of this shit and nothing is working. And again, like that experience taught me that okay, relying on heavy stimulants and amphetamines to power you through a workout is probably stupid. And so that made me a more vocal proponent against hey, don't, get in a habit, get in a routine. Don't be the guy that needs to slam back literal amphetamine and then have to work out not to feel like you're crawling out of your skin.
It's got to destroy your muscles too, right?
Physiologically, I would say that there's probably nothing in those products that's going to lead to any direct muscle loss. But again, it's going to inhibit your sleep quality, which will limit your ability to repair from your training session. And so much of your muscular growth is driven by sleep that if you're reliant on stimulants to a point where it affects your ability to get deep, meaningful sleep, then it will limit your gains.
Right.
And if you go too far for too long without getting enough sleep, it will fuck your body composition entirely. Like you can put 2 people on the same calorie deficit, eating the same exact diet. One gets 6 hours of sleep, one gets 9. The one that gets 6 is going to lose mostly muscle. The one that gets 9 is going to lose almost all fat. It's remarkable.
That's how you you got to sleep more to grow, bro.
And so if you want to grow, you got to sleep. And it does help. But circling back to, cutting through the noise, having been a victim of the misinformation was really helpful because that didn't serve me. And I realized I wasn't the only person who was being victimized by the bullshit. And so I said, okay, what's actually working for me and what's working for my clients? This stuff. And I started making content about what was working for me and what was working for my clients. And I started making content speaking to my actual clients. At first, I started making a lot of content speaking to the people I wanted to impress.
Right.
Trying to speak in a way that would garner me attention. Trying to speak in a way that would position me as a really smart trainer because I was so attached to being received as good enough. I wanted to project as much intelligence as possible. And I ended up completely going over the heads of the people who needed the most help. And so there's a lot of people in the fitness space who make content to impress other fitness professionals. And then there's people who know how to make content to help the people that need the help.
So you're pretty much
That's really powerful.
talking to the if in the beginning it was 3 of your clients that came and got personal training. When you made an Instagram or a reel or whatever it was, you were in your mind you were talking to those 3, nobody else, and then those 3 just kind of grew into however.
I would describe it as when I first started making content, I wanted to make content that impressed people and that made people think I was smart and knew what I was talking about because I had insecurities and inadequacies about where I was positioned. So I said, I've always been able to rely on my intellect. I've always been a little bit smarter than the average trainer, and I have a really good handle on the physiology and the nutrition and the anatomy and the biomechanics, and I'm going to lead with that. and I'm going to try to be the smartest trainer on social media. And that didn't get me anywhere because it's a dick measuring contest.
Yeah.
It's all of these people who want to be the smartest and position themselves as the smartest, and they want to get credit for that. And I realized that content was self-serving. It was only helping me, and it wasn't helping me at all.
Right.
And so then I started making content, literally, like you said, that was entirely curated from conversations that I was having every day with my actual clients.
Wow.
And using a little bit simpler language. Things that most people, the common
Any
person
business
would
could gain
Benefit
from that.
Dialing back the verbiage. And it was amazing how quickly that started to take off. And I started to get comments like, God, it's like you're speaking right to me. Or, man, I wish you were in my area. Or, man, I wish I could train with you. I live somewhere else. And I was like, oh, I think what I was doing was I was making content for trainers and not making content for people that would actually give me money.
Right.
Well, that was fucking stupid. And so then I started thinking like, okay, I have something that most people who are in the social media fitness space don't have. Thousands of sessions worth of experience with real people. Most people just get jacked, do one cycle, do a show, look good, start online coaching.
Right.
Or they train for 1 year, go on social media, start online coaching. And I had been training for 4 years, 150 sessions a week before I ever made one post. And then I spent a year making content that was all about positioning myself as the smartest person in the room. And that didn't really work that well for me. But the minute I started making content that was, one, aimed at the people that I was already helping, but trying to reach the people that obviously weren't in my area, and I would say, two, that was more accessible to people who needed the help, not trying to direct it to the people I wanted to impress, that's when it really started to grow and expand. And I had to check my insecurity there and be like, what do you want to get out of this? Do you want to position yourself and project intelligence, or do you want to fucking help people? Because you're not helping anybody by talking about the pennation angle of the clavicular head of the pec.
You're trying to stroke your own ego at that point. Right?
I was stroking the shit out of my own ego, and I was not getting rewarded for it.
Right.
And the minute I started doing like a more normal style of communication that was more relatable and probably more digestible for the people that needed the most help, I want to work with you. I want to work with you online. Do you do online? Do you do online? And I was like, no, I don't. I didn't even have an offering. I didn't create my first offering until after I already had demand, which is kind of rare. A lot of people, they start with product and they have no demand. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I had demand, and then I curated my product. And that's when I started doing online coaching. And I learned a lot from doing online coaching. And then from online coaching, I got app-based coaching. And then from app-based coaching, I circled back to opening up my own studio and offering all these different things. And so, but it all started with ultimately having to make sure that what I was creating and putting out into the space was created intentionally with the goal of helping the people that needed the most help, not positioning myself to receive clout. Because when I was clout chasing, I was getting no fucking money at all.
Right.
And I know a lot of trainers who got a lot more clout or who have a lot more of a following, but they don't make shit for money.
Right.
I know so many people who have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times the amount of followers. They got no money.
Right.
Because if you have not built trust, if you have not established yourself as somebody who somebody might want to work with, maybe they just want to look like you. Maybe you have 1 million followers because you're jacked. That does not correlate at all to your business success. Like it can. There's certainly people who are very jacked who have a great amount of money, but
you see hot girls on Instagram with hundreds of thousands of followers that don't monetize at all. Same scenario.
Yeah, it's very hard to monetize a following if you have not built any actual value. And it's like, okay, that's why OnlyFans exists. You had to monetize. It's like, okay, you have an incredible body as a woman. This is and no means meant to be derogatory
men
towards
or
women,
women,
because men have OnlyFans. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're a man or a woman who's man or a woman. Let's say you're a man or a woman who's built your platform on the way that your body looks, but you have not added any concrete value, and you have not established yourself as somebody who's trustworthy. And you know what they say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You haven't established any type of caring demeanor with your community. All of your content is thirst trap.
Yep.
The only way you can monetize that is with more thirst trap. And so, you're like, oh, well, nobody's behind my booty program. And it's like, well, yeah, because 95% of the people that follow you are men.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You're going to have to find a different pathway for this,
different
right?
Product.
Exactly. And so, for me, I wanted to stay away from that at all costs, which is why and my physique as far as trainers go is like fucking average. It's good. It's probably better than you might expect. Like if I have a good pump, I look pretty solid. But that's with like 9 years of natural training. You know, like I tell people all the time, like if I had to just use my physique, I'd be in deep trouble.
Right.
But I really did not want to do that because that doesn't separate me at all. There's a million people out there with a great physique, but there's not a million people out there with 10 years of actual training experience.
And providing value.
And this kind of rolls, since we're on the content question, so what's your biggest, like, if you can think back to one post that got the most attention and did the best for you, is it something that you expected to do that well, or was it the most random thing ever that just kind of hit hard?
I remember one post that I made in particular that got like over 1 million shares on Instagram, and it was a tweet that I A/B tested, and I do this a lot, where I tweet thoughts as an A and a B. So I will take a sentiment, something that I've been sitting with, I will tweet it once, and then I'll look at it, I'll tweak it, and I'll tweet it again, and I'll have essentially 2 iterations of the same thought. And whichever one performs better, I'll screenshot and I'll throw on Instagram, or I'll use as an audio clip on a TikTok or something like that. And so I remember I made a post, and I actually have about 70% of the people that follow me are women, which is what I want as a content creator and a fitness professional. Because in the fitness industry, men do not buy nearly as many products or offerings as women. Right. Because men, masculinity again, here we go, I don't need any help.
Ego.
I don't want help. I've got this. I can figure it out. You know, and to a certain degree, that's true. But I had noticed early on in my fitness career, women were substantially more likely to become clients. Women were substantially more likely to stay clients. And so I made a post. I don't remember exactly what it said, but I said, like, it's something like, imagine a world where women were introduced to exercise as a means to be healthy rather than to be skinny, and nutrition as a way to take care of your body rather than a way to change how it looks. And really the sentiment that I was getting out there was, you know, if you take care of your body and you're healthy, you're probably going to like how you look. And if all you care about is how you look, you might not even end up that healthy. And so you might as well just take care of yourself first. And that's a message that women get hammered with, the opposite. Just do whatever you can to be thin and look good. And you know, I had heard that from hundreds of women that I trained who came to me with these horribly idiotic ideas of what they should diet like, or these horribly idiotic ideas of how they should train. And I was like, yo, that's going to break you. And so I made this post, which was essentially just 5 to 6 years of training experience into 140 characters, and that thing blew up. And I think I got 6,000 or so followers off that one post. Wow. And over 1 million shares, and it's been stolen hundreds of times. Like, my shit gets stolen all the time.
It's a compliment.
It is. It is. Yeah. And so, like, that's really what kicked it off. I was like, after that, people started sharing my stuff, and people started stealing my stuff. And I'm like, now we're in the right place.
Now you know we made it.
Yeah.
What do you think? Another person that's blown up recently, Liver King.
Yeah.
What do you think about all that he's got to say?
Personally, I think a lot of, like, the carnivore caveman approach, ancestral approach to, like, eating and training is misinformed. And I understand why it's appealing, because we have gotten so far away from how we used to live as a species, and we're paying the price for it. We pay the price for our sedentary lifestyle. We pay the price for eating a lot of processed foods. We pay the price from being addicted to our devices. And people know intuitively that we've deviated a lot. And somebody like Liver King has attempted to project, hey, look, I am literally ancestral. Everything I do is ancestral. I eat nothing but meat. I do simulated hunts. And he is a literal, like, there's a few ways to position yourself as a owner of your company. And he owns a company that sells animal organ supplements, which is really brilliant when you think about it, because the dude's eating like beef testicles and beef liver and beef heart. And that's insanely hard to get most places. So what are you going to do? You're going to get the next closest thing, which of course he sells. But what he is he's very, very much mission driven. He believes everything he says. I don't, but that doesn't matter. He believes it. It shows up in his content. He puts it out there consistently. It's incredibly viral. It's incredibly unique. And he's made a shit ton of money. But if you were to ask me if I think people need to eat that way to be healthy, I would say no. It's absolutely ridiculous. And nobody, none of our fucking ancestors ate that way. If you've actually studied the evolution of Homo sapien, you know damn well that they didn't only eat organs. They ate berries, they ate twigs, they ate bark, they ate grains, they ate what they could find.
Right.
They foraged. And yes, they absolutely ate nose to tail. But when I look at somebody like that, I look at somebody who's very much 100% committed to the cause. They're consistent with the cause, and it resonates with a large majority of people. And like, I think he's an example or an exemplification of a more extreme approach. And people know intuitively that there's something wrong with how we're living today. But I personally don't believe that the cure to the, issues we're dealing with today is to eat beef testicle and turn off your Wi-Fi at night. I think that there are a substantially more reasonable and balanced ways to approach your fitness that might include occasionally consuming liver, that might include occasionally, opting for less technological exposure. I think all that's good. But, his shtick to me seems performative.
It's like we don't need to go back to the beginning and start over. We can just take a few steps backwards and be just fine.
And remember, these people died when they were fucking 40.
Right.
The people that ate like this died when they were 40. Okay. So do you want to be ancestral when you find out you have a cancer diagnosis? No, you probably want the chemo. It's like, you're like, okay, hey, you got cancer. All right. Well, I'm going to do a juice cleanse. I'm just going to drink nothing but juice. That's what killed Steve Jobs. Yep. If I'm here, let's try what's natural, and let's also try what's new, scientifically proven and effective. Give me the best of both.
A/B test it.
Give me the best of both. I do not want to be all ancestral, but I sure as shit don't want to be, slamming back beyond chicken jerky, which I just saw the other day, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? It's like it's garbage, and it's they're almost always, if you apply a little bit of nuance and work your way towards the middle, you'll find where you need to be. And, we're that way with religion. We're that way with fucking politics now. You got the loudest people on the fringes driving everybody fucking crazy. And then you got most of the people in the middle who think those people are insane.
A little bit of common sense is all we need.
Literally, I look at it all the time. I was saying the other day, I really believe that veganism and the carnivore thing are just political. It's literally, you'll never find a fucking Republican vegan, and you will never find a fucking Democratic carnivore. You fucking won't. You just won't.
Because they're both playing to the same.
The same fucking people. In my comments, bro, broccoli's subprimal. I'm like, okay, click on your profile, and it's America first, big flag, guns in every picture, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. And then it's like, how dare you consume animal protein? And I click on it, and it's like, oh, you're they, them, purple hair. It's like, these are literally, you're playing a character. You're playing a character, because anybody who's actually tried to like change their health and fitness has probably been like, hey, things are actually better when I eat a little bit of meat and a little bit of vegetables. Right. That shit works so much better. It's like just like politics. It's like you don't want to go too far out to the fringe. You got to be somewhere in the middle, or else you're just the loudest guy that nobody wants to deal with.
That's a great analogy for that. Too far out in the fridge. These Liver King, he just put a picture of him up right there saying he's got fake abs and everything. I don't know if that's true, but he said he spent $100K on abs. That's crazy.
I'll say this, like genetically, like structurally, the rectus abdominis, like if you want to pull up rectus abdominis lean, like you'll see that genetically people have a different structure to their abs. Some are staggered, like my abs are actually a little staggered. Some people have different looks, like, and if you look at the anatomical representation, they're always perfect like this. They're never staggered. You see how they're stacked one on top of another on top of another? Look up bodybuilding abdominal pose, bodybuilding abdominal pose. And if you see multiple bodybuilders standing side by side, you'll see a discrepancy in their abdominal structure. And so click on that one, go over to the left one. And you've got right here, you've got Frank Zane over on the left. Was that an Arnold? But you see the different abdominal structure here. Some are staggered, some are stacked, some are perfect, and so obviously this is the best of the best of the best. But the one thing that sticks out to me about his abs is they are perfectly symmetrical, which is out of all the abdominal structures that I've seen, I'd say that the slightly staggered and offset is probably most common, and that the perfectly even and symmetrical is a little bit less common. And the amount of protrusion and the amount of distension that you get from those abdominals, like they really stick out and they're quite perfect. It would lead me to believe that it's at least possible that they're fake. And him saying that they're fake is like, okay, what more do you need? And then also like the guy's obviously on performance enhancing drugs. It's like
That's what I was gonna say.
You have to be,
Yeah.
again, you have to want to believe that he's not, to believe that he's not. And if you want this to be the solution, you're going to believe that he's natty. And if you want to hate on him all day, you're going to be like, he's such a fucking piece of shit.
Just
fake
like
abs,
politics.
Right.
And shit.
What does that sound like? What does that sound like? There are people out there, and I don't want to get too political, but there are people out there that really believe that Donald Trump cares deeply about them. That's probably not true. That's
Right.
probably not true. He's
know
probably a little bit self-interested.
Yeah. And
I think we have all the reasoning and rationale in the world to believe that that's probably the case. But if you want to believe it, you definitely can.
Right.
And so with something like this, I think that most of the people in the middle would probably go, yeah, I think that guy's probably not natty, and I'd believe it if they said he had fake abs. But I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Or
There's a
eat liver
vegan out
balls.
there that's standing outside of his house with a sign right now,
Yeah,
death
totally.
to Liver King. And then there's also some dude standing in line waiting for his autograph. I don't want to be either of those people.
Yep.
Right.
Well, that's what we were talking about, like just being well balanced. I mean, at the end of the day, just having balance in everything, and not what I see with the biggest problem with both of these sides, whether it's politics, whether it's the way you eat, anybody that's like so one-sided they don't want to learn anything about the other side. To me, that's a huge weakness.
Oh,
And
such a
if you
weakness.
can't sit down, like for me, you could turn me from a complete vegan to a complete meat eater if you can, or vice versa, or politics wise, same thing. If you can sit down and we can talk logically, and you can bring up some logical points that I'm like, oh, you're right, I understand that. Like, I'm not attached to any color of politician or type of food. Like, I'm literally willing to be I'm trying to be the best version of myself. So I want to know as much information as you have from every side of it, so I can make the best decision myself. Whatever decision I come to, that's my problem. But
Totally.
I want to have all the data possible from both sides, unbiased, and be able to make my own decision on it.
And social media makes that almost impossible because you're going to get two things on your feed. You're going to get something that you absolutely despise and you rage out on, or something that you believe with entirely.
And that's because
But
of the
it's
attention you give to
all
it.
confirmation bias. It's like, I knew it. I fucking knew it. I knew that was bullshit. And everything that guy says is gospel. It takes a special person to go, okay, we disagree on this. Let's engage in a healthy discourse. My goal with this discourse is to better understand your position and you to better understand mine in a peaceful and calm demeanor. And that is why this country is literally cleaving itself apart at the middle.
Let's divide and conquer.
And we are fighting over stuff that is quite stupid in essence. We fight over some pretty silly things because we're so dogmatic and vehement about not understanding each other.
100%.
I don't care if you're wrong. I don't care if you're wrong about one thing, you're wrong about everything. I have to be right. I refuse to give any ground and any credence that you could be right about anything.
Yeah.
It's cool we're having this conversation with that dialogue, honestly, bro, because it's not very common, but things like this will make it more common, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I want to circle back real quick, just because you brought up steroids and everything with Liver King and him, like Dana White, Joe Rogan, Brendan Schaub. A lot of these dudes are on TRT right
Sure.
now. I feel like that could have an influence on younger dudes trying to turn into these alpha successful dudes. What is the scoop on that? Like, is it actually good for people if they have low T, or like, I don't really know anything about it. So what is
I mean, like,
what is your
nobody
thoughts?
can tell you more about steroids than the guy that's too big of a pussy to take steroids, and that would be me. I cannot tell you how many times when I was 18, 19, 20, I was on the forums like, okay, I'm going to do it. 250 megs a week a test, 10 milligrams of Anavar. This is going to be my PC. I'm going to do it. I'm going to finally do it. And I'd be like, I don't want to lose my hair and get acne. I can't do it. And so you learn a lot about how these compounds work. And I think that the TRT movement is something that you need to be very careful with, because I think that there's TRT, and then I think my testosterone's low. I need some TRT. And I'm going to maybe, instead of being in that 300 to 1200 nanograms per deciliter range, instead of trying to end up at like 7, 8, which is really good. I get my labs done once a year. I'm right around 750, which is chilling. I'm cooling on that. It's like, hey, I'm on TRT now, so I'm gonna use my medicine, and you look at these labs, it's 1500. It's like, that's not TRT, that's taking steroids.
Yeah.
Right.
It's taking steroids.
Do you know what is TRT?
Testosterone replacement therapy.
Okay.
And so TRT and testosterone replacement therapy are essentially medical interventions for men who are what we would describe as hypogonadal, meaning they don't have adequate testosterone production from the gonads or from the testes. And that can be driven by lifestyle, being overfat, being undermuscled, not being active, not getting adequate amounts of sleep. These are all things that can create secondary hypogonadism. Primary hypogonadism would be I had a car accident and I had a damage to my testicles, or I had something disrupted with my hypothalamus. And so one way or another, it's my testosterone's not where I'd like it to be. So I'm going to hop on testosterone replacement therapy to fix it. Now, secondary hypogonadism happens all the time from aging. I'm getting older. I'm seeing a decrease in my testosterone. That's the biology of humanity working to prevent you from reproducing so that more youthful, vivacious mates can find each other and better procreate. Now, men are able to procreate deep into life. They never really lose the ability to have children, but they do lose that testosterone and that virility and that drive with age. And so when you hit 35, 40, 45, 50, and you're, operating on 200, 300, 400 nanograms per deciliter, and you want to bump up to 600, 700, maybe where you were in your 30s, I don't see any problem with that. I think that could be beneficial and helpful. And most importantly, it could help you live a good life. I think what I see a lot now, and I see this with ADHD medication too, a lot of people want to be diagnosed as ADHD so they can get Adderall, so they can be, I'm a boss girl. I'm a boss girl and I have ADHD and it's my ADHD journey and my trauma and I take my medicine. It's like, no, you want an amphetamine so you could grind.
Dude, that shit ruined me when I was a kid.
Same. That shit
up.
ain't, you don't want to mess with that.
That is no joke.
So long story short, there's a lot of people who are on TRT for genuinely good reasons. They want to bring their testosterone up to a range that allows them to perform their best. And then there are a lot of people who know that TRT is a vehicle for looking better and being alpha. And I don't necessarily know where somebody should draw that line, because ultimately the decision to use drugs is up to the user. And I think that if I feel a certain way about marijuana and I feel a certain way about, other psychedelics or cocaine, I should be relatively consistent with my belief system about drugs. Where I have a problem with TRT is when people who don't need it or who take a shit ton of other drugs just pass it off as I'm on TRT. I'm on TRT. And in the fitness industry, that's dubious because you can say, oh, I'm on TRT. And what else are you on, bro? Because when you imply that you're on TRT, what you're implying is I'm taking enough testosterone to replace what I don't have.
Right.
What you are actually doing is taking a super physiological amount of an anabolic hormone, and that's going to change how you look like a motherfucker. And I'll say this. I love Joe Rogan. Listen to so many episodes of his podcast. I like Dana White. Those dudes are alpha with or without it. With or without it. And I know a lot of people who take it because they want to project being alpha. Mm-hmm. And I think, or they want to look bigger and badder and better. And it's like, you can do that naturally, and it's harder after 40. And if you're 40 and doing it, that's cool. But there's an epidemic of dudes in their 20s who are on TRT, and it's like, that's a life sentence.
Right. And
you ain't coming off that shit.
Yeah.
That's life now.
And I feel like that has to do with just everybody wanting to be more alpha than they are. Obviously anybody, no matter who you are, what you're doing.
Nobody took steroids because they were happy with who they were on the inside.
Right. Exactly.
Totally. I know that sounds very condescending and rude, but it's not.
It's the truth,
if you and I'll say that the best bodybuilders who are enhanced would be the best bodybuilders if they were natural. Mm-hmm. The guys who are on the Mr. Olympia stage who have the best physiques, they got the best genetics already. It's the best genetics plus the best drugs that get you up there.
Right.
And that's not necessarily who I'm talking about. They reached a level where they were like, I need this to get to the highest level. I'm talking about the dudes at the gym that you see that are running a cycle to get girls, who are running a cycle.
Or they got their girlfriend stolen by the big dude.
I know, dude, that just happened to.
Yeah.
I thought you said, I know, dude, that just happened to me. And I was like, bro, I'm sorry.
That guy is like, dude, I'm never getting my chick stolen. I'm going to the gym every fucking day. I'm going to get yacked.
Dude, literally every time I've been the closest to pushing that button was after a breakup.
Yeah,
Swear to God,
dude, for sure.
100%.
We've all been there.
I literally remember the biggest heartbreak I ever went through. I texted the biggest trainer at my gym who I knew was saucing, and I was like, bro, I think it's time. I need the plug. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, don't fuck around with me, bro. I know you know where to get this shit. It's time. And he's like, I think you should really think about it. And I was like, thank God he said that, because if he didn't, I'd be pinning to this day, because once you're on, you get a natural suppression of your own testosterone, and it's very hard to get that system booted back up. So it's kind of a life sentence. And personally, I'd rather wait. But when I hit 40, if I, popping where I want to be popping, I'm not
Get your
opposed to
levels
it.
If you're not waking up energized and fucking ready to go,
If I'm not able to perform as
If you
I'd
catch
like
yourself
to
slipping, you're jumping on it.
yeah, exactly.
Is testosterone TRT the same as steroids? It's just how much you take it.
A steroid is a classification for the hormone type. So estrogen is actually a steroid. And you got anabolic steroids, you got corticosteroids. Corticosteroids are like prednisone. But anabolic steroids,
It's like Winstraw.
Winstrol is actually a little bit different. Winstrol is something that kind of helps generally with leanness. As I understand it, it is good at sparing protein, so it actually prevents muscle loss. But when you look at like steroids and somebody who's on steroids, usually what they're taking is a base of testosterone, a steroid hormone, and you take that because when you start taking Deca or Trenbolone or all these other, those are the anabolics, you lose the androgenic. They will shut down your natural test. So you got to take the test as the base. That's an anabolic steroid. And then usually with that, you're adding 1 to 3 to 4 compounds, depending on how serious you are about this shit. And those are the androgenic steroids, or the anabolics. So the Decas, the Trends. And so being on steroids usually is, when I'm thinking about somebody who says they're on steroids, they're probably taking multiple steroid hormones. But you can... theoretically, every girl on birth control is on steroids because the female sex hormones are steroidal hormones as well. It's just when you think about he's on roids, what that's usually denoting is he's taking multiple androgenic and anabolic compounds simultaneously. But a steroid hormone is just a classification.
Gotcha.
Is that the same process for when people are doing the testosterone replacement?
Theoretically, if you're on TRT, you should only be taking testosterone to get your levels to a range that is within that
normal
expected 300, 400 to about 1,200 range. And
that's a big range.
It's a big ass range. And bro, that's like that. It sounds crazy to say this, but like, okay, let's watch the NFL. You guys like football?
Yeah.
Okay, who's your team?
Niners.
Okay, Chargers.
Yeah.
All right, the Bosa brothers. Where do you think they fall? Like let's assume let's pretend that all pro athletes are natty. You think those guys are closer to fucking 12 or 4?
12.
Probably
breaking through 12.
And their pops was a pro too.
Yeah.
So he was probably closer to 12. And if you look at their physiques, it's like, well, shit. Look at what those dudes look like, okay?
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo and Justin Herbert.
Eights.
Sevens,
Eights, right? Okay. Robbie Gold and Hopkins, the kicker.
Yeah.
600.
4. It's like, okay, like that's the
Spectrum.
physical manifestation
You
of
can
what
see
that
it.
spectrum might look like. Robbie Gold's probably listening. It's like, bro, I'm fucking 900, dog. But like it does look a lot different. And that's like, let's assume they're all natural, which most pro athletes, I don't believe that a lot of them are all the time. But if you looked at most dudes, you got them all in a lineup, and you could probably tell who's 12, and you could probably tell who's 4.
Right. And does that testosterone also have to do with like how easily you can get fat?
It definitely has a positive effect on body composition. The more you have, the more easily you're going to repair your tissue. The more easily it is to metabolize fat. Like if you took me, let's say I'm at 700, because I know I'm close to 700. I did my labs in December of last year, so I'm coming up on being due to do my labs again. If you took me and you took me from 700 to 12, you would notice a difference. I'd probably look fuller. I'd probably look more vascular. I'd probably be leaner. Yeah, I definitely would have better. I'd have a way better fucking beard. I can tell you that right now. So you can see a change. You could definitely see a change from just what's happening inside that range. But when people are on roids, as we typically think, or they're on a cycle, or they're competing, they're way north of that. Sometimes 15, 18, 2,000. Double what's, naturally possible. And that's what gets you popped on a test. It's like, oh, your test was at 1,600. Well, that's pretty rare.
Is there ever that where somebody's above like the 1,200?
I'm sure there is.
There's freaks.
Like there's freaks. There's freaks amongst us. Yeah. And I would say if there's guys who are up there, those are probably the guys who want to fight. Right. Those are probably the guys who want to physically destroy another human being.
The Francis Nagano's.
Yeah, that dude got more testosterone than me. I don't know what the fuck you want me to tell you. And if he doesn't, he's using what he's got better. Because you also have androgen receptors. Some people have more receptors, so they actually have more availability. The testosterone they have is more available to them. And the androgen receptors are located usually most densely in the neck and trap area. So when you start using steroids, what blows up on people? Their neck and their traps. Like
I look
instantly.
like a thumb naturally.
Instantly. Yeah, so it's like, okay, you just have a huge neck and huge delts and traps out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, bro, I'm natty. It's like, really? Because those grew really fast. And that's where those hormones tend to bind. So when somebody hops on, you see the neck and the delts blow up.
Gotcha.
Like wildly fast.
I think Conor McGregor might be on steroids after what I've just been educated. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I would imagine that if he's in a period of his training where he's not, he doesn't have a fight booked, that it'd probably be smart to be on steroids.
He broke his foot, his leg too, in his last fight.
Got to recover fast. Nobody's testing me because I don't have a fight coming up, and nobody's testing me because they don't want me to pop a negative. I'm too valuable.
Right.
Definitely a chance that Conor's been on some stuff before. I look at Conor's physique and the fullness that he has and how much things fluctuate.
He drinks a lot too.
It's just, I'd say he's probably used it before. That shouldn't surprise anybody. If you're getting the shit kicked out of you and you need to recover and you don't have a fight coming up and you can get clean before the fight, like I'd probably do it too.
Yep. Yeah, what do you tell people who don't work out at all, have no regimen or routine for it, but want to get started and just kind of it seems overwhelming? What's like your...
I thought you were going to say, what do I tell people who don't work out and have a regimen? I say that's the ultimate fuck around and find out. Because you are going to pay for that. But I tell people the same thing every time. And that is that something is exponentially better than nothing. So if you can just give me 1 day a week, I'll be happy with that. Because 1 can become 2, 2 can become 4.
And do you think that like the weights are like super important, like doing a workout regimen? Because I literally do not work out like pretty much ever, but I do a lot of like.
You exercise.
He doesn't lift weights.
I don't lift weights. Yeah, so I like do jiu-jitsu, wakeboarding, snowboarding, motocross. Like
you're active.
Like I'm very active, but I don't like lift weights.
Well, you should, because you'd be better at jiu-jitsu and wakeboarding and motocross.
Right. Okay.
You really would. Right. And it's like you would probably stand the most to gain from 2 days a week with the weights because you've already developed those skills in those skill-based sports.
Right.
And what would make you better? Would an hour of extra jiu-jitsu a week make you better, or would being way stronger make you better?
Yeah. Right.
And so like that would be, you'd be a prime example of somebody who would benefit tremendously from a little bit of weight training. But I would agree, or I would at least echo that I believe if you're going to allocate a certain amount of time to exercise, that it should be resistance based if you don't have a ton of time. I think aerobic exercise is incredibly valuable. I think a lot of people shit on cardio. It's stupid. You need to do cardio. You need to have a strong heart. What's the number one killer of men in America? Cardiovascular disease. But you get some really unique benefits from resistance training. Better bone density, better testosterone production, obviously more muscularity, more sensitivity to insulin, which is blood sugar. You have better blood sugar regulation. You will age more gracefully. You'll have more balance. You'll have more stability, tons of carryover, and you do get a mild aerobic benefit from resistance training. Your heart rate will be elevated. You can't get that from running on the treadmill.
Cool.
So if you're not doing shit, it's counterintuitive, but I think people should start with the weights.
Cool. So if you were gonna like pitch somebody that maybe wanted to work out, what's the situation? What you got going for me?
So like if you
imagine I came to you, I was like, hey,
the first thing I would say is, how much time do you have? What can we realistically commit to? Like, I need you to tell me how many days a week you could reasonably train.
2. You
tell me 2? Beautiful. We're going to do 2 total body days a week. We're going to focus on mostly compound movements. Those are going to be movements that train a lot of muscles and a lot of joints. That way we don't, we're not inefficient. We're optimizing for your time. So we're thinking things like squats, lunges, deadlifts, presses, chin-ups, things that are going to train multiple muscles. And if you're training twice a week, let's just spread those days apart 2 to 3 days so you have time to recover.
Thursday.
Let's do Tuesday, Friday.
Okay.
That way you get a full 3 days because, again, you want there to be adequate gap because each one of those is a stimulation. And if I stimulate you on, that sounds really weird. If I stimulate you on Tuesday,
you got me sold.
If there's stimulation on Tuesday and Thursday, that means like the further you get away from Thursday, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're probably due again. But we got to wait Monday until Tuesday.
So about like Monday, Thursday.
Better.
I like
better
because Monday is my start day, anyways. Like I want to
everybody's start day
on my Monday.
So if you train on Monday, you're recovering on Tuesday, you're recovering on Wednesday, you stimulate again on Thursday, then you have the weekend before you hit it hard again on Monday. And you do have an elevation in muscle protein synthesis post-exercise for up to 48 hours. So we want them to be about 48 to 72 hours apart if we're only going to do 2 of them. And you guys are smart. If you had to do 3, where would you put them?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Bingo, right? There you go. And so if you did that shit, your physique would change like motherfucker because you're not doing anything. And you have a good build, so you'd change fast, and you'd be better at all the stuff you're already doing, and you don't need to do that much because you're so new to it. It's like a suntan. It's like, hey, I've never been outside before. Okay, cool. Let's not put you out in Cancun in the middle of summer. You're gonna burn like a motherfucker. You put them out, pull them back in. Put them out a little longer, pull them back in. Pull them out a little longer, pull them back in, and eventually you build up that base tan. But if I burn you, you ain't going out in the sun for a while.
So then, do you still do like in-person coaching, or is you all the time online coaching?
All the time. It's so
you have, like, an open
important to
schedule?
me. It's open enough, but like I really try to work with the people that I enjoy working with at this point in my career. I work with the clients who I have a connection with, who need me, and they are all across the spectrum, whether they need me because of a disability that they have or because they need that level of one-on-one care. But I do it because it really helps keep my finger on the pulse.
Right.
It helps me continue to make good content. A lot of people struggle with making content because they're not in the trenches. And I like to be in the trenches, and I make a good living doing that. Like I can generate 6 figures a year easy just training 35 sessions a week.
In-person sessions.
35 sessions. 35 hours a week. I'm never going to work less than 80 hours a week.
What do you normally charge for like each session?
Depends on the client. At 24-hour fitness, it would be like you did packages, and so I'd sell you 20 at a time. Like 20 sessions, $1,400, $70 a session. Now, and I would never recommend this to anybody who's in an appointment-based business, my clients pay me 1 session at a time. I technically have no job security. Like technically, all my clients could pack up on the same day and walk away, but I want them to be there because they're there. And so I'm charging them anywhere between $85 to $100 a session, which for me is probably less valuable than if I were to allocate that time to my online business, which does actually generate more revenue. But I get a tremendous amount of enjoyment and connection from that, and I don't want to lose touch with that.
Right.
So that's what makes you make the great content.
I think so.
And that also helps you tweak your packages for your online stuff. It's like it keeps you with your feet on the ground.
Yep. Keeps me in the trenches, keeps a finger on the pulse. And again, it's a part of my identity at this point in my life. And I'm not willing to let go of it just yet.
And that's at your own gym core coaching method, right?
Yeah. So it's literally like I show up at my own gym where I work with all my boys. It's like this, but a gym. It's literally like, y'all come here, y'all hang out together. You guys are all boys, and it's the best. Mm-hmm. I go to the gym, and it's like, okay, my 3 best friends are all in the gym with me. One of them's a physical therapist. The other 2 are trainers. It's the best thing in the fucking world. I would be crazy to let go of that.
Yeah,
totally.
I would pay my clients $100 a session to hang out with my boys all day. Yeah. And so it's like I've curated this amazing environment that just draws me in, and I don't want to let go of that because I work to build this life, and I want to enjoy it. And that is a huge piece of enjoying it is the relationships that I have with the clients who I help with their health, and the relationship I have with my friends who have a similar mission and purpose. And as I think when we talk about masculinity, there's something inherently masculine about like just getting around and aping out with your bros and like, all right, goodbye, Karen. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you on Monday. Okay. I'm fucking you up in fantasy football this week, bitch. I swear to God. The minute she's out the door, it's like we're broing out. Yeah. And that's just wonderful. That's like, it gives my life so much meaning. And that's why I do it.
That's what it's about, man. It's about that. It's about having fun, building something with your boys.
That's it, dude.
Honestly.
It's like literally what every fucking civilization was built on, having fun and building something with your boys.
Yeah.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, building something with their boys.
Straight up.
Absolutely.
I think it was on your guys' Instagram bio somewhere too that you're staying more quality over quantity, like with your trainings and everything, and just the size of the gym. What's the reasoning behind that?
You just can't be there if you don't have if you're not with a trainer. Yep. It's not a gym. It's like a private training studio. And the reason I did not open that gym for it to be a money-making enterprise. I opened that gym to provide more value to my clients and to film content. And so, if I wanted to lose a lot of money really fast, I'd get into the gym business. Because what do you see all gyms doing? Now they're all charging $10 a month. 24 used to be $50 a month. Now it's $200 a year. That's $10.
just
That's like
took that.
$12 a month.
Yeah, I just did that.
They're all in a race to the bottom, bro. Now your Planet Fitness is your Crunch, your 24. It's all in a race
There's
to the
no
bottom.
differentiation.
It's all cost the same. It's all dirty. None of it's clean. Piss on the floor. I don't want to be in the business of charging people the least amount of money possible so they forget they have the membership and bet on the fact that they're not going to use it because they're fat and
That's
lazy.
me.
Yeah, exactly. That's the gym model. I want to be on
I've
the
probably
other
got
end
all
of
of those memberships, and I don't think I've touched the inside of a gym in 2 years.
That's awesome, though. You're able to analyze the industry, and that kind of highlights areas to improve in, right? And that gives you sort of your strategy and roadmap to how to do so. Besides what's unique about you already, and you know how to approach social, not in the framework of how do I make myself look like the smartest trainer, but how do I actually provide value to people at the end of the day? That's fucking special, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to know the media. It's a whole other thing to know the social.
Yeah.
And nothing will teach you the social like working with people.
100%.
Yep.
Damn, that's super well said. You're all over social, killing it. Plug yourself in. Tell people where they can find you, your podcast, all that good stuff.
Yeah, just Danny Matranga. If you put that into Google or Instagram or TikTok or Apple Podcasts,
How do you
Spotify,
smell that? How do you spell that?
You smell it probably pretty easily right now. DANNY, and then the last name is MATRANGA.
Perfect.
Awesome, man. This was fucking really fun, man. You guys have any more questions or anything for him before?
I'm just curious, where do you plan to take all this going into the future?
Ooh, great question.
You know, I'm at a point in my life now where I see the ability to scale my online business and to probably in the next couple of years step away from doing as much in person. Like I said, it'll probably always be a part of me. But I just got my house. I'm enjoying designing the house and creating a space. And I would honestly say, like, I think moving towards a family and a deeper commitment with my partner, and obviously building my business is going to be a huge part of that. Scaling the app is going to be a huge part of that. But as for as interested as I am in building the business and continuing to grow the business, which it's kind of doing on its own, truthfully, I think I'm going back to the very first thing we started about being well-rounded. I'm just as interested in growing in those areas now. So the business has to afford me the ability to do that. And if ever it takes too much time that I can't grow into that, then I need to dial it back. But right now it's growing into allowing me to maybe take that step. So that's what's got me excited.
Okay, bro.
I think you'll do really great there too, bro.
So-
They deserve that love and attention and respect just as much as
Let's
well.
hope.
This has been fucking awesome, man. Thank you very much
thank
for
you,
your
brother.
time and coming on here and just sharing so much game with everybody.
Dude, I had a blast. Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Everybody watching, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. Spitballers.
Whoop, whoop. Woo.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
I love taking those off.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, dude, you were ready to
You're
go.
fucking
man.
so well
It was
spoken.
so funny because I was coming over here. I was fading fast, bro. I was like, this is going to be one of my worst interviews ever. I'm so tired. I had,
camera action.